Confused, divided, torn, and aimless are the words that I would use to summarize Resident Evil Requiem. Now, at first glance, you might get the idea that the game just outright sucks, but it's actually not that simple. See, the Resident Evil games have always been full of change and variety. One game you're conserving ammo, focusing on headshots and solving puzzles, and the next you're punching boulders into a volcano after fighting a bullet-dodging superhuman. It doesn't make any sense. But honestly, I'm a huge fan of both types. I love survival horror and the feeling of unraveling mysteries in a massive mansion while managing limited inventory and resources. And I also love the mix of horror and action, facing off against hordes of creepy enemies while still feeling powerless at times. No, this is not about you. So when I heard that Requiem would be a mix of both, just shut up and take all my money. 7 and 4 Remake are two of my favorite Resident Evils ever. Surely you can't mess up mixing two amazing formulas into a single game, right? Well, they kinda did, by creating two different and unfocused games, then gluing them together like a broken headset. The wildly uneven pacing, and the over-reliance on fan service to mask some pretty glaring plot holes. And I'm talking about some big plot holes. You can't help but feel a bit disappointed. And yet, to my surprise, I still love the game. I had an incredibly fun experience with it that I will cherish for a long time. So how exactly does a game manage to be hugely flawed and still be a Game of the Year contender? Well, there's only one way to find out. We start as Grace, a technical analyst working for the FBI. One day, her boss summons her to discuss the increasing number of deaths caused by a certain virus, with the latest case occurring at the Renwood Hotel, the same hotel where Grace's mother was killed a few years back. So the logical next step is to send a couple of special agents trained for such matters to the crime scene. But this bald-headed, brain-lacking, inhuman alien decided to send the traumatized analyst who lacks any combat training to investigate. I get it, she has a history with the location, but in what way is that supposed to help? And on top of that, he sends her with no weapon. An active crime scene, by the way. I mean, at this point, I had full faith in the writers that he would eventually turn out to be a double agent working for Umbrella or something. But no, he was actually being deadass. With that aside, Grace travels to Renwood and we start controlling her. The stage is set. The rain falling from the gray sky, the washed out streets full of busy people going about their day, it totally nails the feeling of a crime investigation. We get to the crime scene and an officer guides us through to the hotel. Now I played the game how the developers intended, as Grace in first person and Leon in third. And frankly, there's a handful of settings I wished they included. As an example, the sensitivity slider is tied to both mouse and controller, even though RE4 had different sliders for each. You can disable film grain, there is no FOV slider, which is a necessary option that's been absent since RE7. The intro segment is unskippable in New Game Plus, which technically doesn't even exist. I don't know, it's just a few options that would have benefited the game a lot. In any case, we enter the hotel and the game gives us the option to turn on the flashlight, which is something that I've been asking for since RE2 Remake. Grace finds a picture of herself. At the back of it is a key with an invitation to room 204. One beautiful shot later, I enter the room of a Discord moderator whose bed is full of Grace's pictures. Then we flash back 8 years ago to the time of her first stay at the hotel. Her mother senses that something is wrong and tries to flee, and in the process of running, she hides something behind a painting, then moments later, she gets sent to the gulag. I've heard that a lot of people hated Grace's exaggerated stuttering and fearful voice acting, but I really like it. I mean, sometimes I would freak out just over her heavy breathing. It's a good way of selling you the character. Grace flips the painting and grabs what her mother had hid, a notebook and a CD. And as I was examining the goods, the officer from earlier wanted a piece of the cake and proceeded to attack me with a shotgun. I grab the exit key, but the creep insists on taking a bite. I push him away and run directly back up to the door. He doesn't take the hint, so I throw him out of the window straight into a civilian's car. Don't worry, insurance will handle it. Then I meet the man himself, Victor Gideon, a classic horror movie looking ass villain. His plan is to kidnap Grace as he believes she is the key to releasing a virus called Elpis. So he grabs her and chokes her out Khabib style. And finally, we switch to Leon S. Kennedy, who is back into business investigating the series of deaths occurring to the Raccoon City survivors caused by the T-virus. So it turns out that anyone who has been infected with the virus previously has a dormant version of it that's activating just now, which is why they're dying, and both Leon and Sherry are infected. Yes, the same Sherry from RE2. Leon finds Victor and Grace, but before he catches up to them, Victor infects the streets and the entire neighborhood goes berserk. Leon's gameplay is a beefed up version of RE4. Now whether that is a good or a bad thing is totally up to you, but personally I've found his sections to be either slightly too chaotic or just all out actiony, which is not what I prefer. More on that later. Victor manages to run away and Sherry guides us to the location of his care center. Afterwards, we wake up as Grace inside the care center, and what follows is hide-and-seek horror gameplay, which is not my favorite, but I'm okay with it as long as you can build good tension, which this section totally does. The mission now is to find the fuse to escape this section, and of course there's a big stalker enemy hunting me. The cool mechanic in here is the ability of turning the lights on or off, as the monster is hurt by the light. So you go around searching for the fuse while she's after you, and the game pulls off a genius move with the save room. It gives you a sense of safety every time you enter it. But at a certain point, it suddenly pulls that away from you and destroys the lighting in the room, which endangers you. I mean, I won't lie, this isn't the first game that has used this trick since Silent Hill 4 did the same 20 plus years ago, but it was handled really well here. However, hands down, the worst thing about this section and a huge complaint I have with Grace's sections is the amount of times you collect an essential item only for the game to throw the stalker right in front of you, preventing you from progressing. The first time they did it, it was frightening. The second time, it was kinda scary. But by the 7th time, I was yawning, contemplating my life choices. At the end, we get the fuse and try to escape. However, the girl drags Grace back into the darkness. By the way, have you seen Leon's new Porsche with an 8-cylinder V-shaped twin-turbo engine? So Leon pulls up to the care center all dripped up and ready for a date with Gideon. But instead, he's welcomed by a nurse. She asks him to wait in the office. Then an alarm goes off and she enters the room all nervous and anxious. Now Leon went through hell twice fighting zombies in RE2 and Ganados in RE4. What in tarnation was he thinking here when he saw a pale man with blood on his face? This goblin had his pistol ready and still decided to wait for the woman's death just to act. And by act, I mean this.
I think I want a second opinion.
So Leon's knives have been swapped to a breakable hatchet that could be repaired almost as if it's a reload, and his segments in the first half are usually short, acting as a refresher to both allow you to relax and enjoy the bombastic gunplay. My only complaint is how little space you've got for the fights. It just removes the freedom of thinking and coming up with strategies on how to clear the area. The encounters are like this: aim, shoot, go back a few steps, rinse and repeat. But I guess that these parts are meant to showcase the brutal gore and blood, both being absolutely mind-blowing at times.
It was perfect. Perfect.
Eventually, Leon finds Grace and saves her from the monster. She stutters every 2 words, borderline rage-baiting Leon, but he keeps his cool and hands her Requiem, his magnum, but in the darkness lies Gideon. He picks up Leon and drops his favorite move, the chokehold, but from the front. And finally, my favorite section in the game by far, the care center, which includes some of the best few hours in any Resident Evil game. I'll talk about it extensively because I adore this segment. The care center is your typical huge building with a main hub, different hallways and rooms and puzzles, you know the gist of it. However, what makes the entire section unique are the zombies. The zombies here retain some of their humanity and memories from before. One of them used to be a cleaner who now wipes the blood from surfaces. One of them is a chef who's still cutting meat. Another one used to be a worker at the hotel and refuses to leave the lights on. Now all of that is amazing and great and beautiful and I'm all here for it, but the genius move they pulled is that the game integrates those additions into gameplay. So you could use their old habits into maneuvering around them or outright killing them. One of the zombies is disturbed by noise. If you throw a bottle at a nearby zombie, the noise guy would swarm the room and kill anyone nearby. And if you switch on some of the lights, the worker zombie would be lured to that spot and you could sneak in from behind him. There's so much tech here, like killing the fat zombie with the noise guy, or using Requiem to kill 3 different zombies with a single bullet. Also, you start the game with 8 inventory slots. And this is the first game since like RE1 where inventory management felt really strict. I backtracked like 5 times for each room just to collect everything. It gave me the feeling of old school survival horror games. Speaking of RE1, Crimson Heads make an appearance, but this time they're named Blister Heads. If you see one of those bad boys, it's a wrap. They're so beefy and sporadic, attempting to kill them is not beneficial at all. So the main objective of this area is to collect 3 pieces that unlock the courtyard door. You gather each one by solving a puzzle, and you could choose which ones to solve first. It's not a linear event. A big complaint that people had with RE4 is how basic the puzzles were. And I'm happy to tell you that Requiem has some of the most brain-dead, infant-focused Patrick meme puzzles ever. I wonder how I'm gonna find out the combination by potentially deciphering abstract poems. Nah, here's a picture of the solution. There's also the analyzer. I don't know, bro. I tried so hard to understand what I'm doing, but I just kept clicking randomly and things worked out. Don't blame me, blame whoever designed this. At a certain point, the game introduces blood sampling, which is ripped straight out of the Evil Within. In fact, there's a ton of inspiration pulled from that game. Like maybe a bit too much inspiration if you ask me. Now the collected blood is used to craft healing items, knives, and hemolytic injectors, which are used for stealth kills. This mechanic alone feels like a separate game. What are you gonna use the blood for? Crafting a knife and missing out on stealth kills or healing items? You choose your own playstyle. Alright, let's go back to the storyline. Grace meets a kid named Emily who's been experimented on, leading to her loss of vision. Grace, in the name of friendship, uses Emily to solve a puzzle with Braille. However, in order to get Emily to the puzzle location, you have to carry her with the dumbest system in Earth's history. Whilst carrying Emily, you cannot shoot. You cannot put her down at any time, so you have to go back to the save room on the other side of town just to clear the area. And if a single zombie slipped away, well, you better get your ass all the way back there. Anyway, Emily solves it, gets kidnapped by the monster, and Grace goes after her to the basement. The game cuts to Leon being tortured by Gideon. He starts flirting with our protagonist and pisses off all of Leon's fangirls. Honestly, you can't blame him. I don't know how Capcom finds these actors, cause who in the hell looks this good at 74 years of age? Leon unties himself and kicks Victor. They start brawling, but then Gideon realizes he's not built for this and runs away. Moments later, Leon runs into a Burger King regular. This lame fight happens for no reason. Like there's no build-up, you're just thrown randomly into it. He picks up a shotgun and empties it on the fatty. Then he pierces his head with the hatchet, and the cannonball explodes. Now is a good time to talk about Leon's visit to the care center. In a nutshell, you go back to the same places that Grace went through. What really bothers me is how you could skip 2 puzzles out of the 3 with Grace before heading down to the basement and basically let Leon easily destroy everything in the care center. And by the time you go back to it as Grace, everything is already cleared and all you have to do is solve the remaining puzzles and it's done, which completely ruins the entire care center section. I don't know why that's even an option. Thankfully, I am indeed a miserable human being, so I chose the hardest path by solving the 2 puzzles first before switching to Leon. So, Leon goes into Victor's office and finds information linking Grace to Elpis. Then we cut back to her in the basement. This section absolutely sucks on a second playthrough because it is infested with that horrible, "Oh, you wanna progress? Have this."
Oh my god, bro. Oh, hell no, man. What the
But that first time was genuinely amazing. I love darkness and basements and stalkers and horror games, so mixing all 3 into one is a recipe for success. Grace finds Emily doing time, and the only way to get her is by powering up and unlocking the jail cells. However, you need to collect 3 batteries. One of them is next to the jail cells. You can use it to power up different doors across the basement and gather the final 2. It's a really neat design choice where the entire part feels like a mini puzzle. And there's a certain jump scare where I literally had to pause the game out of pure terror. And I've never done that with a horror game except maybe once. Ultimately, I power up the jail and pick up Emily. The girl goes after us, but we reach an elevator and finally escape. Or do we? Grow a pair, Capcom. Why do you refuse to show protagonists being harmed? Do you know how much more powerful Grace's character would have been had she actually lost that leg? They could have evolved her character into something unseen. Instead, they chose a damn fake out. Anyhow, Emily hands us the final door piece and we finally escape the courtyard, where we find a helicopter and a driver named Harry. Of course, it appears that he lost the keys to the chopper in the nearby house, so now I have to get them for him. As a surprise to absolutely no one, beneath the house there is a secret lab, because what is a Resident Evil game without a secret, massively funded lab that no one knows about? Within the lab is Victor, who appears to have succeeded at identifying Grace as the key to releasing Elpis. What that means will soon be explained. After he disappears into the abyss, the lab undergoes a self-destructing mechanism. Here the game hands you a gas that blows up zombies, and the amount of blood is unlike anything I've ever seen in a game. Outstanding. We get the keys and strap in, but the horde starts climbing up the glass, and it goes about as well as you'd think. We crash into a tree, the poor guy dies, and Emily is injured, which means we're back to Leon, who notices Grace needing help. So we provide cover with the most satisfying sniper ever made. Also, can we just appreciate the RE engine? Oh my god, does the lighting look phenomenal in this game. And the cherry on top is how unreal the optimization is. You get it? Unreal because Unreal Engine sucks. Leon drops down and meets up with Grace, who takes Emily away as Leon handles the situation. So there's this boss that we fight twice in the game. Basically, if you shoot his blobs, they explode and turn any nearby body into a blister head, which was really cool because it forces you into thinking. You can't just randomly shoot him, you've got to separate him away from the dead zombies. So Leon clears the place and we go back to Grace. This is easily her worst section in the game, and it just happens to be a sewer setting. Sewers in horror games are on a diabolical run. The girl is now a stalker that roams the area as you try to restore power. Again. But this time it's way worse because the place is very confined. In any case, we restore it and put an end to this creature. It's low-key lame that there wasn't like a real boss fight, but beggars can't be choosers. Emily's injuries get the best of her, and she transforms into one ugly creature. Now keep this in mind, she fully transforms, okay? Anyway, Leon pulls up and starts blasting. Grace, with the survival instinct of a golden retriever, goes, "No, that's Emily." But Leon's unbothered. He knows this girl has got to go. So he kills her, and Grace is flabbergasted. She refuses to go with Leon and instead chooses to follow the guy that let her get bit, left her near a predator of a monster, put her in the care center where only nightmares lurk. But who cares? Here's a Wesker clone. This guy is Zeno. His existence in the game means jack. He holds no purpose nor does he affect the overall story of Wesker. He's just here for the vibes. Sherry informs Leon that Victor is heading towards Raccoon City, and we go after him. Then we arrive at the same city where it all happened 28 years ago. It's a pretty emotional moment, until you meet the spider that somehow survived a nuke. Remember when I said how Leon's first boss just happened out of nowhere with no build-up? Well, the exact same thing happens here. I don't get why we needed a spider boss fight out of nowhere, but it happened and the fight was mid-AF. You need to shoot the back of the spider, which you could rarely see because the thing moves rapidly. And not only that, but if you're stuck at a climbing animation, you could still get hit and lose health. Anyway, after dealing with it, Leon finds a gate blocking his way. This is where the bulk of the game happens. Raccoon City serves as somewhat of a semi-open world. Your objective is to find 3 parts of a detonator to blow up the gate. You could go about it however you want. It reminded me so much of the Evil Within 2, but a bit smaller with less objectives. But long story short, I found this section to be longer than it needed. His gameplay is fire, but there are these little details that annoy me, such as the stuns and how they're incredibly rare. The merchant has been replaced by a freaking box, the upgrades are lackluster at best, the enemy variety sucks, every enemy is the same with a different skin. The open field design of RE4 where enemies used to come at you from different heights with different attacks, projectiles or melee is now gone. There are no side quests or a shooting gallery, even though the latter didn't bother me that much, but maybe the biggest disappointment was the presentation. Raccoon City is nothing but destruction, ash, and grayness. Yes, a nuked city must have these characteristics, but they're just not amusing to look at. And having nearly half of the game's runtime in the same monotone setting is just uninteresting. However, on a positive note, this collapsed building section was amazing. The glass part where instead of shooting the zombies, you could break the glass from underneath them and send them straight into Hades was brilliant. Anyway, Leon blows up the gate and rides a bike to Raccoon City's center. It's all chaos here. The roided version of RE4's dogs start running after me. Then Victor shows up with a bike, and here I'm like, what in the Dom Toretto is happening? Shortly after chasing me, Victor blows up a building and my hopes of reaching the center are gone.
I don't give up that easy.
Never mind, Leon, you still got it. At the end of the chase, both characters decide it's time for a western showdown with bikes.
Should've worn a helmet.
Ah, come on, Leon, you've had better lines. So Leon reaches the center, and to no one's surprise, it's the RPD. Kinda had some emotions watching this. I think they handled the police station in the best way possible. Most of it is inaccessible and there is nothing but ruins, however that's totally fine. And they finally used a remixed version of the original soundtrack. And the nods towards Marvin were really cool.
Brenna. Kennedy. Reporting for duty.
We find Grace and Zeno and eavesdrop on the convo. Zeno reveals to Grace that Raccoon City was nuked to hide an underground lab of Umbrella beneath the orphanage. The retcon here that RC wasn't nuked by the government is just plain stupid. And I'm extremely fed up with the secret Umbrella labs. Like, do these guys build a hidden lab whenever they're bored for the giggles? Anyway, he also tells Grace about Elpis, which is Spencer's last virus that he created, in which he believes that she is the only one capable of releasing. Then he proceeds to explain how the Connections started experimenting on children to try and clone her, but have always failed. And we go into a flashback scene of one of them. Again, on a repeated playthrough, this section stinks. It's a way worse version of the Sherry section from RE2, which was already boring in that game. So Grace realizes that Emily is one of those kids and immediately collapses on the floor. And eventually Leon decides to act.
What the?
Mr. Kennedy, I had a feeling you'd make an appearance. Sorry, but I don't have time to spare.
Mr. X, oh have I not missed this guy. Having him in the game was really cool, but what's not cool is wasting a boss fight slot on a reused fight against him. It's literally almost a carbon copy of the RE2 fight. This game's boss fights are a huge disappointment. However, one of my favorite scenes in the entire game is when Leon enters Kendo's gun shop.
Terminate. It's my daughter. You're a cop. You're supposed to know something. How did this happen? What they did to us.
I'm so sorry. Never again.
Man, these are the scenes that I live for. A reminder of why Leon is the man he is today, who's still fighting to help and protect the innocent. Anyway, Leon heads to the orphanage and in his way he starts fighting a plant that's similar to another plant from RE1. Nothing to see here, just plain fan service. So Leon goes into the lab and finds Grace in the camera feed. That is when a dozen soldiers break into the lab and attack us. But Leon, despite being 86 years old, could take out an army on his own. However, after killing them, he meets the real deal.
Backup is on the way.
Not necessary. I'll neutralize the target myself.
Bro, I know for a fact Hunk's fanboys were fiending over this fight. Personally, I never really knew Hunk or played his game, so I couldn't care less about him. All I care about is how good the fight is. And frankly, it's not that good. He's just a nerfed version of Krauser. The room is so small and he attacks too often, leaving you no time to plan, which forces you into spamming parries every second instead of strategizing like the Krauser fight. So Leon reaches Grace and the Wesker wannabe starts fighting him off. Leon is hanging on by a thread, so he takes Grace and runs off, which leads to him losing consciousness. She waits for him to wake up and tries to find a way out of the dump. And the game decides to bring back the liquors. Honestly, they really don't add anything new here, just an extra layer of waiting and time wasting for the sake of prolonging the game's runtime. And maybe you could consider it fan service, but to me, it just feels like they burned all the budget on the first big sections of Grace and Leon and realized that the game isn't long enough, so they cheaped out by reusing old enemies. Anyhow, Grace opens up a path for Leon and stumbles upon the Batcave, where she finds files on her past. She inserts the disc her mother hid and watches a video of her interview with Spencer prior to his death. Let's quickly summarize this. According to the game, Spencer had regretted his work with human evolution and wished that he hadn't made the virus. So as a way of making himself feel better, he decides to adopt Grace from the orphanage. This is a huge retcon. The last time we saw Spencer was his death scene in RE5, in which he says,
I was to become a god. Creating a new world with an advanced race of human beings.
Mind you, this was merely seconds before he died. My guess is that Capcom wants to rewrite Spencer's character and in some ways humanize him in the RE5 remake, and to me that's ludicrous. Spencer is the fictional version of Diddy and Epstein combined. No matter what good this piece of trash does, it could never cleanse him of his wrongdoings. We take back the control of Leon and this guy is fighting inner demons. The virus has caught up and he's on the brink of despawning. So we cut back to Grace with the transition of the year and she makes her way to Leon. Moments later, the two protagonists go back to Zeno and he demands Grace to release Elpis. She realizes that Elpis is not a virus but a cure made by Spencer as a way of redeeming himself. Here you could either release Elpis and get the good ending or destroy it and get the bad ending. I don't know why we have two endings where one is clearly canon and the other is just a gimmick, but I digress. Grace inserts the correct password and releases Elpis. Wesker's #1 glazer immediately injects himself with it thinking it's another virus. He loses his powers and Gideon comes back from the dead. I'd like to think that he was just standing there waiting for his cue, cause in the bad ending he just never shows up. Anyway, Zeno starts arguing with Victor and gets decapitated. Now Gideon's vision aligns with Spencer's, as in he wants the cure to be released. So, am I dumb? We're both on the same side. Why are we fighting him? Some people theorize that he wants Elpis to himself, but again, the writers did a horrible job at communicating both Zeno and Gideon's intentions. It shouldn't be this vague. Now for the final boss fight. After doing serious damage, Victor falls to his death and transforms into a nemesis. I wonder where I had the exact same boss fight before. And at last, we destroy Gideon's ambitions.
This time, you ain't getting back up.
Sir. Mr. Kennedy. I have a message from Captain Redfield.
I wish we could have saved Emily.
Grace.
I didn't hit any of her vitals. She could still be alive.
What are you saying?
Maybe we can save her.
Resident Evil Requiem. The general consensus on the game is that it's amazing, and I very much agree. But there's so much wrong with it that people are neglecting. And honestly, I'm fearful of the future. I don't know if Capcom is gonna look at the sales numbers and think, yes, this is the formula that we should stick to. Because they absolutely shouldn't. The game's pacing is beyond messy. This game should have been Grace through and through with hints of Leon, which is why the first few hours of the game are flawless. Then, the second half focuses on a downgraded version of RE4 with a boring presentation, and an endless amount of cheap fanservice to both pad the game and hide the glaring plot holes of the story. Resident Evil games never had the best stories, but good god, this is a new low. And I keep going back to Emily being alive. Leon shot Emily in 15 different places. How does he know where her vitals even are? And didn't she fully transform? How could she just revert back to her human form after dying? This Disney-ass bait ending is just plain.
It's the biggest piece of dog shit.
Also, the bike section, like, come on. I don't want to be that guy trying to ruin people's fun, but if we seriously keep praising nonsensical set pieces like the bike section, then we're heading in the exact same direction as RE6. This is just history repeating itself. People loved the original RE4 for its masterful execution of blending horror and action. Then Capcom misunderstood people's opinions and thought, the more action we have, the merrier. But let's not get it twisted. The highs of this game are genuinely peak. Grace's initial few hours in the care center are nothing short of amazing. There's so much planning, whether it's backtracking to get the dozen items you couldn't hold before, or choosing what to craft in order to survive, or the genius zombie design where the options of progressing are endless. Leon's small integrations in the first half are perfectly placed. A breather to calm you down while simultaneously prepping you for the infinite horrors of Grace's next section. The gore, art design, lighting, cinematography, and the animations are the best the series has ever produced, and I'm more than excited to see what RE10 has in store. If you enjoyed this video, a like and a sub to the channel would mean a lot. And if you wish, you could check out my other videos where I cover plenty of other games, including other Resident Evil titles. But in any case, see you in the next one.